Greetings, hello, welcome to another episode of the Gaming Aroma podcast. It is Sunday, the 24th of March. I'm your weary host, KDB, and I'm back once again for some gaming chat fueled by coffee. I am in a much better mood this week than I was when I started recording last week. I had some issues at the start of last week. I think my Tesco shop hadn't arrived, or my coffee hadn't arrived or something. And the weather was still really shit. Spring hadn't arrived. It's much better today. It's really sunny in the south of England. We had a hit and miss day yesterday. It was sunny, then hailstorms, then thunderstorms, then sunny and chilly wind. So yeah, it's kind of trying to get nicer. But today's really bright and nice. After the podcast, we are popping out. Me and the fam are popping out. Let's do a few things, and then coming back home for family coming round here. And hopefully sit in the garden. That'd be good, right? But I'm back, yes, for some more gaming chat. And after last week where it was... Well, actually, the last 2 weeks were a bit dead for gaming news. A bit slow. This week, I've kind of struggled to decide what to talk about. The week has kind of been all over the place. There's loads of things that caught my eye. And there's things that caught my eye that I was like, I could talk for hours about this, I could talk for hours about that, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna do some news roundups and give a few thoughts on a couple of things that I have picked out. But I think the main thing I'm leading towards today is my gameplay, because it kind of links into one of the news things. And my gameplay section is going to be about Alone in the Dark, and some of the news is going to be about Alone in the Dark as well. This 2024 reboot, which is here. So I'm going to get to that soon. But yeah, news-wise, it's been wild. We've had, still coming off the back of the PS5 Pro stuff. There was more stuff about that. We've had rumoured Xbox handheld. We've had the release of Dragon's Dogma 2. We've had... What other news did I see? Yeah, there was quite a few things, really, but a couple of those I'm going to touch on today. I'm going to start with the age-old debate. Wars have been fought over this. Fanboys have been slaughtered. This is, of course, the great question. And this ties into... The reason I want to talk about this is because it actually taps into a few of the news headlines that came out in these past 7 days. And that is, does 60 frames per second in video games really matter? And can most people even tell the difference? At the start of the week, the topic of 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second spiked again, because this was down to conversations around a few things. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's performance mode being really ropey on console. It's only on console, right? It's only on PS5. Dragon's Dogma 2 having a really unstable, uncapped frame rate option on consoles. Along with some poor performance on PC. The PS5 Pro specs and how that was going to affect frames per second and frame rates on games in the future, and them producing their own DLSS technology that's called PLLS? I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, sorry. But basically like a frame generation technology, right? Or an upscaling technology to try and help with frame rates. And then the future of GTA 6, and is this going to be 60 frames per second on console? And is PS5 Pro going to be the only place where you can get 60 frames per second? Now, I know a lot of people don't actually care about this stuff, and instead they just want a fun game to play that doesn't crash, and that's totally fine, I think. But if you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you're more than just an average gamer, and you do at least have some kind of interest in how your games perform and what's the best experience for you. So yeah, all these different news reports talking about frame rates, it just got me thinking about the question, does it matter? Does 60 frames per second matter? Should you care? Is it fair to call out releases with without a steady 60 frames per second performance mode on consoles? I think the real answer is sometimes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And I think pretending like it's not an issue may sometimes be actually doing a disservice to not only the game, but your own experience as well. Though sometimes it's less relevant and almost completely irrelevant. The problem we seem to have with a lot of the discourse is that many of the voices online seem to imply that 60 frames per second is the only way to play video games. And this isn't just console warriors looking to like take jabs at platform exclusives and all that. Some very smart, very respectable people who I follow who cover video games make it very loud and clear that they outright won't play video games that don't have 60 frames per second. Or if, maybe not completely not play, but they will go out of their way to avoid and wait for a patch. And yeah, they outright hate it. They blanketly say they hate it. I kind of wanted to plant my flag with this stuff because as a pretty hardcore gamer, I do kind of seem to find myself not aligning with the loud 60 frames per second or nothing voices online. I have a few thoughts on why, and it's ironic because I'm a fidelity snob for the most part. I've always been like that, and I think that's only increased as I've gotten older, where we have more varied and impressive TV technology. Picture quality has always been important to me. To wanting to experience design and style, and not just in video games. And it stems from movies, really, from movies and TV way back in the day. And my first love really was film, and that being like such a central pillar of my life and studying it and working in it. Making sure you're getting the intent of the creator was so important to me, and it would really frustrate me when people wouldn't calibrate their TVs properly. I'm always the person in the family who calibrates the TVs. I still am to this day. When it comes to movies and TVs, I've gone on the attack in the past against like subpar conversions from American TV shows when they're shown over here. I don't know if anybody watched Game of Thrones when it was on Sky Atlantic, or any of the HBO shows, actually. I don't have Sky anymore, but back in the day when I did, the broadcast versions of Game of Thrones were horrific. And most people watching it maybe wouldn't have been able to tell, but I always went out of my way to buy the Blu-rays, and you should too. If it's funny because I was listening to my buddies David and Alex on the Winner Is You podcast, and David was talking about how he was buying all the movies he loved in digital format from Amazon and such, and then I think he realized that the quality he was getting, buying the 4K movies wasn't actual 4K, and you can't beat actual 4K discs, and that's true. And yeah, the long and short of it is, if you want the best quality movie or TV version, buy the Blu-ray, buy the HD Blu-ray, and in most cases buy the 4K. Now 4K is a different conversation. Sometimes the distributors or studios or whatever, they really push and farm out the 4K conversions, and they're not done very well. But you will then see sometimes directors get involved with the 4K conversion, make sure that everything's correct. You can generally tell when it's done badly when an old movie with lots of visual effects is upscaled to 4K, and on the 4K Blu-ray it looks like a cartoon, and it's not that cartoons are bad, but it doesn't look as good as it's supposed to, because it wasn't produced for that level of quality and that output, so there's like a rushed conversion. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here. So I'm kind of always a fidelity snob, but ironically, when it comes to games, I've never been a 60 frames per second snob, and I think that stems from my first love of film. The cinematic, filmic look of 30 frames per second in games has never bothered me. I'm someone who played through the Dead Space remake, Alan Wake 2. What else recently? There's a few games recently where I checked out the performance modes, the 60 FPS, but I played 90% of the game in 30 frames per second because those games didn't need it. They were more about the kind of cinematic presentation and the experience and the atmosphere, the filmic look, and I thought it did wonders. Those stable 30 frames per second. Starfield, a game which I'm always banging on about, is locked 30 frames per second on console. It's very cinematic and it runs fine, and it's like a freakishly smooth 30 frames per second as well. They made the right choice there, because playing that game you often forget. If you quickly jump to a 60 FPS and then back to 30 FPS, you'll be able to tell. But yeah, it was really good on Starfield. I will often play games at 30 frames per second because I'm kind of comfortable with that cinematic feel. Now, I appreciate that with games like maybe fighting games and Twitch shooters and I guess racing games as well, 60 FPS can get you a lot. I remember playing Forza Horizon 5 constantly at 60 FPS, thinking, yeah, this is the way to play it, because I mean, it's a little bit about the reaction time, but and they say, there is less latency with faster frame rates. Of sure, so that's better for fighting games and Twitch shooters and stuff. But I don't know, there's something about playing a racing game, a fighting game, and like a shooting game, like a Twitch shooter. I'm kind of embodying a different experience than I am when I'm playing something like Alan Wake 2 or an RPG or a horror game. And I'm trying to find, it's difficult for me to find the words, but I'm more kind of appreciating some games as like an immersive movie experience, and then other games as video games where I'm kind of want to put myself in the feet of the character. Yeah. Well, not character, avatar, I suppose, is the better way to describe it. And this is one of those things, like, as I'm talking, I'm like, I could write an essay on this and I could have longer conversations with people, but yeah, I suppose the long and short of it is, does it matter? Sometimes. It absolutely does matter sometimes. I think pretending like you can't see the difference is... if you genuinely can't see the difference when they're side by side, there is something wrong with your eyes. And that's the truth. How much that impacts your experience of the game is, that's less relevant and more personal to you. For me, there are many occasions where I prefer the 30 frames per second experience, and I know that's a weird thing to say sometimes as a hardcore gamer, but I just think it stems from that initial love for film and how I see games as being kind of close to film and immersive film story narrative-like experiences with parts that you can control. Yeah, I don't know. But it's just, this debate seems to fire up like every few months, when new games come out and frame rates are sort of dissected and stuff. To me, when a new game launches and it's 30 FPS, I don't care. I'm fine. I want a stable frame rate. I don't want any stuttering and dropping down to 20 frames per second, but which I've seen that games like Dragon's Dogma 2 is doing. But yeah, I'm fine with 30 FPS, and I just think the very, very loud voices acting like this is the only way to play video games, or choosing not to play games because of it, or slating the developers because there isn't a better 60 FPS mode. I just think, I don't know, maybe broaden your tastes a little bit. I don't know. Is it a taste thing? Is it just because I'm old and I like things slower? Maybe that's what it is. But no, it's not. I've always preferred it that way. It's not something that has really bothered me. So yeah, that debate's in the news again. I just wanted to say how I feel about it. I'm fine with 30 FPS. Okay, let's move on. I had a couple of bullet points here. What was the other news I wanted to talk about? So, the Xbox handheld. Yeah, this was a thing that came off, a sort of rumor that came out in the last couple of days. Xbox is rumored to be working on a new native Xbox handheld. This is according to Jez Corden of the Xbox 2 podcast. Kind of like I talked about previously as well, how Sony and Xbox will be wanting a slice of that Steam Deck pie. This kind of makes sense. I would love an Xbox handheld. I think the main thing is that we're now in a space where it's unlikely, because of development times and cost, that we'll be having different versions of games created for handheld versions, like we did in the PSP and DS and PS3 and Xbox 360 era, where the PSP and DS games were completely different to the console counterparts. This, an Xbox native handheld, will just be, people want a place to play their console games natively, but it'll be at the cost of some resolution or something like that. So it's very exciting to hear that they're working on that. The PlayStation Portal has obviously done very, very well. I do wonder if lots of people bought that thing not knowing what it is, which, sounds like maybe I'm insulting people's intelligence, but I have friends who buy consoles thinking they do something that they don't, generally because of marketing not being clear. I had a friend once who bought a PS4 because he thought it was the only place that you could play Call of Duty. He genuinely believed, was arguing with me in the gym, that he thought you can only get Call of Duty games on PlayStation, and that's because of the marketing deal. And I think the PlayStation Portal, because what it is, as we know, it's a remote play device. It's not a native handheld. You need to have a PS5. You need to have your PS5 switched on. Is that right? For it to play. And you need to have good, stable internet connection. There's no native play. It's all over the internet. And it's just remotely streaming from your console. Apparently it's good. Apparently, as long as you've got good internet, the technology is fine. So that's cool. It would be a lovely little companion device. If I had a PS5, I'd think I would probably want one. But yeah, this thing is selling out and they can't keep up with demand. I do think lots of people see it and think they can just turn it on and play their games natively without the internet. Parents will buy it for their kids thinking that, and it won't be until they get home and it's told, yeah, you need to have an internet connection on, that they'll figure out what's going on. Yeah, because I've seen that stuff. I've seen it firsthand, and I know that there's people out there that aren't as clued up on the technology. Because you see that on the box, and I don't think you're generally questioning if it needs an internet connection and stuff like that. And, some parents out there just wanting to make their kids happy, or some grandparents even picking it up and buying it for the kids. Yeah. So I'm not surprised it's sold out. Nice little bit of kit, but not what I would want first and foremost. A native handheld would be way more exciting. But yeah, so there was things about some technology in South Korea being registered, and people think this might be a prototype for the Xbox handheld, so yeah, I'm very excited to hear more about that. As I mentioned before, the Switch has nailed it. They've sorted it out. They've already done this, and yeah, at the cost of performance maybe, but clearly it doesn't matter because it's the biggest selling console of all time. So Xbox and Sony will have their high-end, high-powered consoles, and then they'll have their native handhelds, hopefully both of them on the side. But I'd definitely get one. I'd love an Xbox handheld, especially because my TV is often stolen by my wife and child. Yeah, what else did we have? Oh yes, here we go. So, microtransactions. I wanted to talk about this for a bit before I get to my main section. Dragon's Dogma, I can't even speak. Dragon's Dogma 2 had some microtransactions, not added late. No, they were at the game in launch, but microtransactions were left out of a lot of the reviews, or potentially all of the reviews. So these unexpected microtransactions and performance issues, to be fair, are disappointing players. So yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 has received like massively positive reviews from critics, but some players or some people online are unhappy about the addition of microtransactions after the reviews were published. The microtransactions, God, you can tell it's Sunday morning. I cannot even get my words out. These microtransactions include items that affect gameplay, such as the ability to revive the dead and change character appearance. Fast travel as well was another one. Yeah, kind of, little core gameplay features that classically you don't have to pay for, and you don't have to pay for them in game. This is all earnable in game. It's not locked behind a paywall. It's just there. They're basically cheats. You're paying for cheats, right? And this is a thing that has been creeping into games over the past few years. I remember Resident Evil 2 Remake was maybe one of the first ones to do it, where you can unlock everything, but then they offered you the option to buy, like, did they call it like the special key or something? And it was like £2.50 and it unlocked all the infinite weapons. For people, that might not have time to unlock everything. But yes, so the game, massively positive reviews, 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s and everything, like across the board, really, really well. But people are experiencing frame rate issues, which Capcom has acknowledged and intends to fix. Performance issues, I think, are worse on PC. So despite those issues, it's still selling really well, and I'm seeing lots of people online talk about it and say they love it, and it's really fun gameplay and awesome and dynamic and stuff. It looks really, really good. I was going to pick it up, but I'm playing a couple of other things at the moment first, so I'm going to get to it. But the microtransactions, so this is another one of the age-old debates. Does it matter? Is this whole thing overblown? Should we be giving Capcom shit for doing this sort of stuff? And again, I think it's one of yes and no. And sometimes the anger online is absolutely overblown. The, shall we say, pearl clutching and flabbergasted reaction from people going, microtransactions, those bastards, they've tried to trick us. Those reviewers didn't mention this. Like, yes, a lot of people angry at reviewers for not talking about it. A lot of people angry at Capcom for putting them in the game, and I guess mistakenly thinking that these features are being locked behind a paywall when actually they're not. I actually just had to stop recording there for a second to go and use some Vicks nose spray because I'm stuffy once again. I do think I'm getting an early onset of hay fever. I know we had some high pollen days. I didn't get hay fever allergies my entire life until last year, and they were really bad last year, and I think they're coming back now that spring's arriving. But yeah, the microtransactions, so that I do think the reaction was overblown online. And some people were maybe confused and didn't realise that you can just add them in game. That being said, this is 100% bullshit predatory behaviour from Capcom and any developers that do this. These are cheats. They're making us pay for cheats. Back in the day, all you had to do was hit up, down, left, right, A, B, select start on your controller, etc. And you'd get this kind of stuff. I think that stuff should come back into games. But the reason it doesn't is because, okay, so they know if you're plowing through the game really quickly by using cheats, you're going to be engaging with it less, you're going to be playing it less. You may, I don't know, maybe more inclined to trade it in and get rid of it or something like that. So particularly for because obviously this isn't a live service game, it's a single player game. So they're like, how can we keep people engaged in the game? Let's make a great game. But also, how do we capitalize on the people that maybe don't want to spend hundreds of hours and do just want to have fun in the game? I know, let's charge them for the extra bonuses. And that's bullshit. Like, and there is no other way to describe it. It's bullshit. The response I see a lot from people is, oh, you don't have to buy it. Just vote with your wallet. Don't buy it. No one's forcing you. Correct. No one is forcing you. You're choosing not to buy it. You're not everybody. There are many people out there playing this game that will be enticed by this stuff and will pay the money. And there are people that will pay it both willingly, knowing exactly what they're buying. And there are people that are paying it for the kind of allure, I guess, of it. And there are people that don't really understand what they're doing and will be paying it. There will be children paying it as well. I know people say, well, that's up to the parents to monitor. Yes, it is. And you can add controls so that purchases can't be made and stuff like that. Yes, it is. But Capcom knows that not everybody's going to do that. This is far beyond just, we're just adding this as a little extra for those people that want to speed things up and don't want to grind. It's like, yeah, that's fine. But they know full well that lots of these transactions are going to be made through people that are confused, people that are attracted to buying things in games, and it's just another way for them to kind of milk it. And that's bullshit. And I've got nothing wrong with games selling you stuff and selling you. I don't think microtransactions are necessarily a completely bad thing, especially when you think of game budgets and stuff and people wanting more. Sure, I'm happy for them to sell skins and stuff like that. To be honest, I don't really have a massive problem with skins that cost £10 and £15. It's like, yeah, somebody had to sit there and design it and model it, and texture it. It took time to make. And yeah, if it's cool, let Capcom get their money. But I think there's sometimes it feels like there's a big difference between things like skins and then gameplay features like this, which gameplay features, I don't know, that people might think that they need to buy to help them progress, or think that it's going to give them this huge advantage. And there is a really kind of, manipulative behavior going on here. And it's not just Capcom. Loads of people do it. Loads of other games do it. I think, there are people that do it worse. I don't think Capcom are one of the worst kind of, offenders, if you like. There's other people who are way more predatory. Ubisoft, EA, etc. I mean, FIFA Ultimate Team charging everybody for those packs that don't even carry over. Is that still the case? You build your Ultimate Team, for the whole season, and then the new game comes out and nothing carries over? I haven't engaged with that in a long time, but if that's still the case, that's got to be the worst of all, right? And my brother has openly admitted to basically being, hooked on the gambling in that game, where you buy the cards and see what players you're going to get, and then he's spent hundreds on this stuff, all for it to just be useless when the next version of the game comes out. Yeah, that's worse bullshit. But yeah, so back to these microtransactions, particularly that Capcom are doing. Is it that bad? Sort of. Yes, you don't have to. Nobody's forcing you. You can still enjoy the game as is. But this is a full-priced single-player game with some very kind of unnecessary microtransactions in it that are just there to take advantage of people willing to or unwilling to, willing to or absent-mindedly spend the money. It's not going to take advantage of most gamers. I don't know. They don't release the numbers on this stuff. I mean, they keep doing it, so obviously people are buying it. I mean, how much money they make from these things, it's probably... I don't know. I'm assuming, because like I just said, my brother spends hundreds on FIFA. There's people out there that will just buy them for the sake of it. So, yeah, I'm not a fan. It doesn't make me dislike the game anymore, because like I said, it doesn't actually have a bearing on the game. I haven't played the game. I want to play the game. I think about how Resident Evil 4 Remake did the same thing. It doesn't make me dislike the game, but I am not going to pretend like it's okay. Those two things can be true. So, yes, the reaction is overblown. Is it an issue? Yes, it is an issue. And I sometimes think maybe the overblown reactions need to be done so that developers could potentially be kept in check. And it's just a little reminder that, look, don't waste your time doing this, because we're not going to spend our money. But then something like this, these microtransactions, they are it's not like the skins. Like I said, there's no work involved, I think, in these microtransactions, adding extra power-ups or whatever it is. It's stuff that's already in the game. It's just ones and zeros and just allocating numbers to you, allocating items. It's not, here's a new skin pack, here's, this crossover and stuff that a team spent weeks making, and we'd like to make some money back for it. And especially in free-to-play games, like fine. Like Fortnite's free-to-play. I got no real issue, I suppose, with them charging money for the skins. Maybe they are a bit overpriced, but they got to do it somehow. But in full-price games, to have these kind of microtransactions is, yes, not a good look. And like I said, they're not the only one to do it. Fallout 76 has done it. Because Fallout 76, although a live service game, is not free-to-play. What else? Like Suicide Squad is a full price game, but doesn't have these kinds of microtransactions. The shop is all cosmetic only, so any extra costumes you want are where you pay extra. That doesn't mean they're not going to bring in this stuff later, and I'm sure people will have things to say about that. So yeah, microtransactions is a big thing. It's an ever ongoing thing. Yeah, you might vote with your wallet, but loads of other people do, and I'm telling you, the fact that they're in the game means people are buying them, means people are using them. I'd rather they weren't in the game. I'd rather that Capcom capitalized on DLC and more substantial stuff. Cosmetics, like I said, I'm kind of fine with cosmetics in a weird way. I know back in the day there was games where you used to be able to unlock cosmetics as you went through. And it's like, well, they didn't used to charge for them before, but now they do. And it's like, yes, but back in the day, I don't think the games had the same budgets as they do now. And to keep the standard high, they need extra revenue streams. So it sort of makes sense. But yeah, stuff like this is predatory at the same time. It's out there to take advantage of people that aren't really paying attention, or people that have just got loads of money. And I don't think we should be bankrolling these aspects of the game. These features should just be standard included. And the other thing, which I didn't even talk about, it's kind of ironic. The director of Dragon's Dogma 2 gave an interview a while back where he talked about how fast travel is only in your games if your games is boring. Your game should be interesting enough to get around naturally. And he thought fast travel was basically called shit on fast travel. And now here we are with the option to buy fast travel in the game. Now, was that a Capcom mandate? Who knows? Is it against the director's wishes? Probably. But either way, it's just kind of ironic. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it, I suppose, is sometimes, like the frames per second, sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it's not. Okay, on to, I guess, my main topic and leading into my gameplay. And that is primarily to do with Alone in the Dark. 2024 reboot is here. A game which, despite massive delays and a complete lack of marketing, I've definitely had my eye on for a while. And the reviews came out this week. The game launched, and something really interesting happened. The reviews were very mixed across the board. Some of them were incredibly negative to the point of concerning, and some of them were more mixed in the middle, and some of them were more positive. So there was a huge scale across the board for Alone in the Dark. The first, so I was anticipating these reviews and I was waiting for them because I think I already had my mind made up. I was going to buy the game. I didn't pre-order it. I don't pre-order games. I don't think I've pre-ordered a game in a long time. But I was waiting for because it had been quiet and there was no marketing. I was like, alarm bells were starting to ring. And so the first 2 reviews I saw were very negative. One was Rick Lane from The Guardian gave it 1 star out of 5, calling it soporific horror and criticising the performances of Jodie Comer and David Harbour. Chris Scullion from VGC was the second review I saw, or maybe that was the first review I saw. He also gave it a negative review, saying it was a promising setup but is let down by repetitive puzzles, poor combat and frequent glitches. Then we had kind of middling reviews. Eurogamer gave it a 2 out of 5. Although is that middling? That's quite low. Games Radar gave it a 1.5. Yeah, that's low as well. IGN gave it a 6. And then there were some more positive reviews, which were from Xbox Era, who gave it an 8 out of 10. And then, funnily, IGN Germany gave it an 8 out of 10. Eurogamer Poland gave it an 8 out of 10. So, yeah, the sort of European outlets of those other publications gave it higher scores than their English counterparts, English and American counterparts. So, yeah, this obviously worried me, and I thought, okay, fine, what's going on here? But then when you kind of sit back and look at it, mixed reviews, they're always interesting to me, because I think that means, okay, a lot of this is going to be down to a taste thing. Again, it's stuff I've talked about in the past. It's not like this game is categorically broken. Everyone playing it says, yes, unplayable, terrible. No, we've just got some reviewers where they've clearly not jived with what it was doing, and then others who really enjoyed it. And I wanted to point out something in the Chris Scullion review in Video Games Chronicle. And that is, and this is something my buddy Steve from First Aid Spray picked up on as well. Now, Chris Scullion is, okay, so before I mention this, reviews are funny, reviews are weird, we know this, and it can take a very long time to find reviewers that you trust. These days, I have about maybe 3 or 4, maybe 4 to 5 reviewers that I trust, that I will always go to for their thoughts if I feel like I need to know something. And I feel like I understand their reference points, I understand their tastes, I know their history. So yeah, I have a lot of context for their opinions. It's like your friends, why you'll generally trust the opinions of your friends, over random strangers, right? And it's why you should, because you can understand where they're coming from. Even if you don't agree, you can appreciate what they're saying a bit more, because you get it from their perspective, because you understand them. Chris Scullion is a journalist who, for a long time, was definitely among the reviewers and games journalists that I trusted. I kind of stopped jiving with his opinions on games a few years back. I don't really know what it was. I think it was around the time that Breath of the Wild came out, or maybe a little while after that. And I know Chris is a big fan of Breath of the Wild. I think he called it the best game ever made. At least he did at the time. And obviously I don't know this guy personally. I just want to clarify that. And this is no hate on him, but I noticed his review because he was a guy that I would often go to see what he was thinking. And then, yeah, some of his just opinions went in directions that I don't know, I could never really, as I say, jive with. So I moved away from him. So I noticed his name and I thought, wow, he's really hating on it. And I think in a tweet he said, it was a really difficult review. He wanted to like the game, but he didn't have fun or something. I'm paraphrasing. But there is a line in his review which I wanted to pick out. So here it is. Despite the over-the-shoulder viewpoint giving the impression that it plays like a modern adventure, Alone in the Dark is clearly designed with 90s survival horror sensibilities in mind. This is very much a game where puzzles are the central focus, and this is where things start to go downhill. There are 2 player guidance options called Modern and Old School. The latter gives the players no help whatsoever, leaving them to figure everything out for themselves. This would be fine were the puzzles not often buried under reams of exposition. Many of the solutions lie in the books, notes, and various other text sources lying around the house. Okay. I'm just going to say a bit more. So he goes on, he says, these are rarely Resident Evil style, quote, hey buddy, the locker combination is 6341 memos. Instead, they're often lengthy prose, providing lots of extraneous information with one small clue hidden in one sentence. Sometimes there aren't even any clues in there at all, meaning these are I'm really struggling to speak. Sometimes there aren't even any clues here at all, meaning that some of these are purely for lore purposes. Changing the player guidance option to modern alleviates some of the issues, but only to an extent. Now when you read the text, the game highlights the words or phrases to help you with the puzzles. On top of this, when you collect a key and go to the in-game map, it highlights which doors you can unlock. It also occasionally gives you objectives in the corner of the screen, so you know what you're doing next. His review goes on, but this is a baffling few paragraphs to read. So I've had a weird relationship with reviews for a while now, and I've often been struggling to kind of understand what the point of them is. I've been questioning the sanctity of huge outlets and their score systems and stuff like that, where, you know, anything, we've sort of developed this culture with the reviews where anything under an 8 or anything under a 7.5 is an absolute disaster. That's all people look at. And in a time where there's so many games now, there's so much more, people don't have time to find their trusted reviewers and build up these relationships. There's so many of their games, they just want to see, what do the top streamers think? What does IGN think? What do the top outlets think? And as we know, negative reviews will often garner a lot of engagement and subsequent articles tearing apart games. I've talked about it on this show. I don't need to repeat myself, but we're in a funny place with the reviews where it feels like nobody can kind of make their mind up what scores mean anymore. And yeah, which is why we'll often try to focus on the context of the review. Like, as I've just said there, so the scores are the issue, but when it comes to the actual reviews, I think people need to spend time reading the reviews, because it's what the writer says that matters. And if they can kind of, if somebody wants to give a game 1 out of 5 or 4 out of 10, and then their review lists lots of reasons why it's bad or why they can't recommend it, then cool, I'm fine. Even if I don't agree, it's like, cool, at least you did your homework. I don't know what the fuck Chris Scullion is talking about here. I mean, this is, like I say, these are some of the most baffling paragraphs I've ever written. I think in the game, so in like on the shop page of the game and on the the marketing for the game, I'm just going to open the Twitter account because I know it specifically says something about it being a throwback, right? Return to Deseto Manor in this reimagination of Alone in the Dark, a love letter to the 90s cult classic horror game. Yeah, so clearly this game has gone out of its way to present this classic experience. And like Chris Scullion has said in his review, you can choose to have modern and old school, which guides you more, and some leaves you up to kind of play it for yourself. What he's talking about here is a taste thing. This reminds me of the Alien Isolation review from IGN years ago, which has now become a meme and everyone likes to reference it. The game's too hard. You die all the time. Chris Scullion is complaining the game is too hard. And that's where he's saying the game is going downhill. He's calling out the puzzles for not being hand-holdy enough and not giving you enough information. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a game that's trying to do that old school 90s stuff, and it's failed, and it's just not been able to pull it off. I've got the game, and he's wrong. He's clearly a great guy, a successful journalist. He's done a lot. He's fantastic. He's wrong here, and he can, I'm sure he stands by what he's written, and he really believes that the lack of assistance in these puzzles deserves to mark the game down. I completely disagree. I think he's missing the point. I think it's a taste thing. I think it doesn't align with maybe what he enjoys. And he's a fan of Resident Evil, as far as I'm aware. So it's weird to see him saying this. And I don't know. I think sometimes, everyone can have off days. Reviewers can have off days. But yeah, and he's not the only one. A few people said in some of their other reviews similar kind of stuff. So he's not alone. But, these reviewers, they're incorrect and unfair. And I think I don't want to turn this into 40 minutes of hating on other people's opinions. But we live in very precarious times where review scores finish studios. I think you need to be very, very careful with what you're saying about games and encouraging. I'm not saying just be nice about games even when they're shit. No, call out things that are bad. I think more time and effort maybe needs to be put into reviews. I mean, we live in this horrible quick turnaround time. Stuff has to be first. You've got to get it online right away. Short turnaround times to write your reviews maybe is an issue. Games not reaching the right audiences because of, I guess, subpar reviews. And I think this is a example where the reviewers are doing harm to a game, doing unfair harm to a game and developer. Because I've got the game, as I've said, and I've played it. So this kind of leads into my gameplay section, which I'm going to round off the episode with today. Alone in the Dark is a AA game. Make no mistake about it. It's not a AAA game. It's a AA game. It is if you imagine, I guess, Resident Evil 2 remake style with less combat, more of a focus on the story, the narrative, the investigation side of thing, and those puzzles. I'm right at the very end of the game. I haven't quite finished it yet. I'm pretty sure. So I think the game has 5 chapters, and I'm halfway through chapter 5 or the beginning of chapter 5. So I'm nearly there. Of one character, because you can play through as 2 characters. For me, it's really, really good, and these reviews are these mixed reviews, I guess, make sense because I can see where maybe some people would have wanted a more AAA, higher quality horror experience. That's kind of not what this is. This absolutely feels throwback. The combat, as I said, it's reduced. It's reduced to small encounters here and there, and it's not perfect. It's kind of similar to Alan Wake 2's combat, where it's a little bit clunky, but it's fine, and it's kind of not really what the game is trying to get you to focus on. The game is very much driven by its atmosphere and unraveling the story and solving the puzzles, and a lot of time and effort and production value has gone into those sides of the games. And yet there are a few glitches and a few bugs, but nothing that destroyed my experience. And it's important to talk about those. There was one section where one of the characters' hair was just constantly flickering, but it's stuff that can be fixed in a patch, hopefully. Didn't really ruin everything for me. It wasn't game breaking. But it's a AA game. Some of the best experiences I've had in the past few years have been from indies and AA games. Don't get me wrong, some of the best experiences I've had have been from AAA games. But I just think we can't write off these lower end. We can't write off these smaller games because maybe they're trying something different or doing something different. I feel like this game is aimed at a specific group of people, which may harm its success. It's just weird to hear seasoned game journalists complaining about puzzles that require you to read the documents in the game and find the answers and look around and figure them out for yourself. Because the puzzles are great in this, and I have been playing on old school. So this is the mode that doesn't hold your hand. I have had no text highlighted for me. I've had no extra hints from the game. I'm playing on... you can customize the difficulty as well. I think you can show... you can turn on map markers, you can turn them off, you can turn on interactive markers, you can turn them off. But yes, I've got old school mode on. So I specifically did that because I'd read some of these comments. I thought, I'm going to go into this game and see, can I... And I'm generally shit at puzzles like that. Like, I will struggle, I'm not clever, I'm stupid, and particularly if there's stuff to do with numbers, like, yeah, good luck to me. But I thought, no, I'm going to go in maybe what felt like as the game intended. And obviously this is why they've put that modern mode in there, to be a bit more hand-holdy. And I haven't played the modern mode, so I don't know how much more hand-holdy it is. I've gotten to, like I say, the very near end of the game. I have been stuck once, and it was nothing to do with anything I had to read. It was nothing to do with conversations with the character. It was to do with it was like a visual puzzle that I was convinced I had right. And yeah, I was trying. You got to move pieces around. Okay, I'm not going to spoil it, but move pieces around to make a big picture. I was convinced I had it right, and I Googled it, and I just had one piece in the wrong place, and I think I was just tired and overlooking it. So I've never been stuck. I have thoroughly enjoyed reading the files. All of the files can be spoken to you as well. They're all voice acted and performed really well. And yeah, you do have to pay attention because the answers are in there. And if you don't pay attention while you're trying to do the puzzle, the character will say, I think I've got the answer in this file or in that notebook. I'm sure I know the answer. I've got it on me. The game tells you, go and open your files, have a look. The answer is right there. All of the diagrams are there. All of the codes are there. Everything is there. And then, yes, there's lots of files which are just lore and story, which is very much the focus of this game. It's trying to drive home this, this 1930s Louisiana setting that it is, which I fucking loved as well. Felt very Resident Evil 7, which I know isn't set in the 30s, but the whole Louisiana stuff. Yeah, the atmosphere it builds up, the design, the look of the locations, the music. The music this is a soundtrack that, it has that 30s sensibility with some horror injected into it, and so good. So yeah, combat a bit fiddly. A couple of little glitches, graphical glitches, but nothing really too worrying. Atmosphere, story, puzzles, really, really top quality, great stuff. And your mileage may vary. Maybe you don't want to read these files and stuff. I mean, for me, it's kind of inherent to where I first fell in love with video games in a big way, with things like Resident Evil. And yes, the files were simpler back then, and it was all very clear. And there was less digging around, but I want to be challenged. I think of games like Signalis, where the puzzles in that were really fucking difficult, and nobody was complaining about that in reviews. So yeah, this is just one of those situations where a few of these reviewers have maybe expected a higher quality game here and not got that. Fair that they wanted some better combat, but again, I don't think it's what the game's doing. I didn't want to call it like what's those games you get? Games like The Medium, which are they're interactive dramas. This borderlines being on like an interactive drama game, like an interactive narrative. Interactive narrative? You know what I'm trying to say. But it does so well, I think, at building the world, building the story, making you question what's going on. And you do have to pay attention. This is not a put on a podcast and play the game. This is you have to think about what you're doing type of situation. So yeah, that's, I suppose, my summary. Like, this isn't a review from me because I haven't finished the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the game and play as the other character. I mean, David Harbour as Edward Carnby is fine. I mean, he's obviously, I think he's a relatively talented actor. He seems mostly enthusiastic in this game. There are some points where it feels a little bit phoned in. But, maybe I just need a bit more time with that. I don't know. But I am keen to play from the other character's perspective, from Emily's perspective. Yeah, and see the rest of the stuff that the game has to offer, because I found myself really sucked in, and I think, I think a lot of people are maybe going to miss out on this game because of the mixed reviews and because of the really negative reviews. And I don't want, yeah, I think people just need to remember to try and find things out for themselves. And I feel like there is a bit of a push back as well. I've seen a lot of the people I kind of follow online, I've seen them questioning or noticing the mixed reviews and going, okay, I'm going to try it out for myself. And then I've seen them saying, people in the horror community that actually, no, this is pretty solid. Don't listen to the reviews because this is worth your time. And yeah, have a look at it, check it out for yourself. And I would absolutely recommend it to anybody that likes Resident Evil, to anybody that likes horror games, to anybody that's looking for something with a bit of a slower pace that is very, very focused on kind of the story, mystery, and unraveling the stuff, and doesn't take, I guess, 100 hours to do, because yeah, I'm nearly finished with one playthrough and I think it's around 8 hours, nice and digestible, but then I can go and play as the second character and I guess maybe speed through it a bit quicker. I'm not sure what the differences are. I'm keen to see what the differences are between the two playthroughs. But yes, I have seen people maybe kind of getting a bit tired of this nonsense from reviews, and in precarious times where bad reviews shut down studios, and I don't know, I'm not sure how we get to a better place with this. I think we start, to be honest, with getting rid of scores. I know that's not going to happen, but aggregate sites, everybody having different systems for their scores, it's not unified, so it can't work. You can't trust, really, Metacritic. You can't trust, what's the other one? OpenCritic. You can look at a score from somebody and then look at a score from somebody else, 2 scores out of 5. Their rating systems are different. So it just kind of, it spoils it skews the wider view for those people that don't spend time reading the reviews and do just check out the scores, and may or may not encourage them to buy a game. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we need to get rid of scores. And I think when it comes to reviews, if you really want to know about a game, read the review, speak to somebody you know, read the review from somebody you trust, I suppose, is the long way to that very short point. And I'm not saying anything, I guess profound here. I think most people know that. I think a lot of casual people don't know that, and they do just look at the scores and want to get involved in the conversation online, on Twitter and all this stuff. But yeah, it was nice to see a little bit of pushback on Alone in the Dark. Like I said, I was kind of convinced already, and then I saw the reviews and it did give me pause, but then I saw the mixed reviews and I was like, oh, okay, fine, yeah. I've seen enough to know that I'm going to play this for myself. And I'm glad I did, because I've had such a blast with the few hours that I've had with the game. Looking forward to playing through it more. And kind of, it's made me want to... It's obviously done something for the franchise, because it's made me want to go and... I'm not like a hardcore fan of Alone in the Dark or anything, but it's made me want to go and revisit the others. It's made me want to read up and watch some retrospectives and stuff like that. It's really sucked me in. I'm not like getting into details about the story and stuff, but I've loved what the story has done and where it's got to. It really ticked boxes that I look for. And I'm not sure if that's what the other games do. I think I'm wondering if it's trying to do its own thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of diving into some of that stuff. But yeah, so this isn't a review, it's just a reaction to reviews and giving you my own perspective. And, if you're listening to this, you probably know who I am. You know where I come from. You know I can be a bit weird with my tastes sometimes. But as I always say, I'm honest. I just try to be honest and authentic about what I think. It frustrates me that we live in the headline clickbait world where stuff just gets buried and lost in virality and... and arguments online and all this kind of stuff, when clearly with this game, Alone in the Dark, a lot of care and attention has gone into it in terms of its fundamentals and the substance of it. And yes, there's a couple of technical glitches and stuff, but it's, by the standards of some games in the past year or so, this is nothing. This game is fine. It basically runs like a dream. So yeah, go and play it if you like horror. I need to finish it. I need to get ready for South Park Snow Day. And then after that, I might be moving on to Dragon's Dogma 2, but we'll see. Too many games, too little time. Yeah, there's lots more I could probably say, but I'm going to leave it there for now. Got to go do some things with the fam. Hope everyone has a fantastic week. Please do subscribe to the podcast, give it a rating and review. Yes, subscribe on YouTube. I put it on YouTube, but it's just audio. There's no visuals or anything on there. And yeah, that's about it. Until next time, come and follow me on Twitter. I am still on there for now at K_B_D_B_. There we go. Even get my own username right. It's going to be a good day. But yeah, come and let me know what you think of Alone in the Dark and what you think of frames per second and microtransactions. I can't fucking speak. I'm going to finish this podcast and get on with my day. Have a nice time, everybody, whatever you're doing. Bye, 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 bye.